Nicodemus here. On today's episode, I want to go over a question that your client asked you regarding one of the videos that we just made. So his question was, what's the best tool to snap out of the death thought or the fear thought?
Yeah, we made a video, one of the previous videos we made talking about fear thought, death thoughts, all thoughts of fear, are ultimately death thoughts. And I get this question a lot. So let's take it through that something that all of us go through, whatever it is, like an event or a person where we get whether you want to call it triggered, you feel a reaction, we feel shut down, we feel, you know, maybe disconnected or it's like you're not in the present moment, you're very hazy, something like that. We all experience something like that. So, when that happens, ultimately, there's a lot of different techniques and things we can do in practice, and it really comes down to practices, things we do on a daily basis, just like exercising. We're really learning to exercise a new muscle, whether it's the muscles calling in the Holy Spirit, the muscles, seeing our fear thoughts, changing our mind, any maybe some, techniques, with the body. Remember that in the Course, he says that the way back to sanity is through the body. So, there are techniques that work, things like breath work, things like exercise and yoga, move the energy. If you feel really angry, maybe you know, uh, go underwater and yell or hit some pillows out, move the energy through the body. That's always useful. It's one of the reasons I do a lot of practices, exercise, yoga, things like, maybe cold plunging or saunas, breath work, even breath work. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with people where I'll just have them do breath work for, y 20 breaths, and they'll go, I feel so, different. I feel so shifted. My whole being feels different than it did right before I started doing it." So those techniques are great. I'd like to read you something from the Course. I actually sent this person who asked me that question, you know who you are. And it says, this is from our chapter 5, section 7, paragraph 6. This takes us through a process, really almost like a miracle process that we can all practice. And the first thing to understand is that nothing outside of us is causing that reaction in us. It's always coming from us, our beliefs and interpretations, our way of seeing the situation. And ultimately, if we're talking Course in Miracles, which teacher we're listening to, because our thoughts reflect the teacher we choose to listen to. If we choose to listen to the ego, our thoughts will reflect that. If we choose to listen to the Holy Spirit, our thoughts will reflect that. So it says in chapter 5, section 7, paragraph 6, it says, decision cannot be difficult. This is obvious if you realize that you must already have decided not to be wholly joyous if that is how you feel. So think about this for you and I. If we experience anything other than joy, I must have decided to feel that way. Now, I know that that's hard for us because it always feels like it's happening to us. But what Jesus is saying in the Course, he says, this is obvious. If you realize that you must already have decided not to be wholly joyous if that is how you feel. Therefore, the first step in the undoing is to recognize that you actively decided wrongly. And when he says wrongly, it doesn't mean like you're wrong or you're bad. Not like that. It's wrong-minded. And we know it's wrong-minded because of the experience or the result, because I'm not at peace. So he says, therefore, the first step in the undoing is to recognize that you actively decided wrongly, but can as actively decide otherwise. So you could choose again, always. No matter how bad the situation seems for you, for me, for any of us, we could always choose again. I could actively decide to choose right-mindedness. It says, be very firm with yourself in this and keep yourself fully aware that the undoing process, which does not come from you, is nevertheless within you because God placed it there. So the undoing does not come from us. Our job is just to have a little bit of willingness to see it different. Like, I want to see this person or the situation differently. And I'll say this, for you, I've said it for myself, for everyone, for all of us. If we knew how to do it, we would have, like if we knew how to choose another way, and not to say that if we knew what the other way was, we would choose it, but we get so lost in the ego's curriculum, in the ego's voice, just shows you that we actually need a power force that is the teacher, is the healer, that is the corrector. Now, our job is important though, because our job is to have the willingness to give these thoughts over. So it says, be very firm with yourself about the undoing process. It's within you because God placed it there. Your part, you and I, is merely to return your thinking to the point at which the error was made and give it over to the atonement, the Holy Spirit, the healing, the atonement, the at one, to give it the whole healing process of all of us, to give it over to the atonement in peace. I don't want this. I want peace. I'm going to give it over to show me what peace looks like. You see, that does something to us because number one, we're in a situation where we're surrendering. And in that surrendering process, a new way of seeing can dawn on our minds. So it goes on, it says, say this to yourself as sincerely as you can, remembering that the Holy Spirit will respond fully to your slightest invitation. And this is what we could say to ourselves. I must have decided wrongly because I'm not at peace. How do I know? Because I feel it. So I must have decided wrong-mindedly. I must have decided wrongly because I'm not at peace. I made the decision myself, but I can also decide otherwise. I want to decide otherwise because I want to be at peace. I do not feel guilty because the Holy Spirit will undo all the consequences of my wrong decision if I will let Him. I choose to let Him by allowing Him to decide for God for me. So think about what's happening when we do that. What are we doing? We're surrendering to a power greater than ourselves. Actually, that we find ourselves in these reactions and these death thoughts of fear. And my wife is a breath worker. She would call it in breath work and rebirth breathing. They would call it the death urge that we have in us, is that all these thoughts of fear, the Course calls it attraction to fear, attraction to death. When I say death, it's not like death, you want to go jump off a bridge, not like that. It's any thought of fear in our mind is a fear, is I think I said this on the previous video from the Yoga Sutras, is avinavesh, is the fear of death. So that's not like I'm just afraid to die. That's, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay my bill this month? I'm afraid. That's, I'm afraid of confrontation, of talking to this person about it. That's any thought of fear for us. So what are we doing? We're giving over to the Holy Spirit and all these other things that, it's funny, my client mentioned that, like breath work and all these other things, they all have their own place. And you might have your own for you, tools and practices and things that you use that work for you. Keep doing them. And ultimately, it's between us and the Holy Spirit, between us and God, and saying, here's the wrong-mindedness. I'm going to give that all over to you. All I want is peace. I don't know what it looks like because clearly I chose wrong-minded. I'm willing to choose again because I want to be at peace. And I'll tell you this, in my experience, if you ever, no matter how crazy of a situation you find yourself in, if you go through this process, you will start to discover a deeper peace. It's almost, there's a feeling of God has your back. And really, fear isn't possible. We actually start to begin slowly at first, and then it builds where we transcend fear altogether. So the next time you feel even a tinge of fear or something really big, anger, frustration, fear, guilt, shame, all these things that are of the ego's doctrine, the ego's thought system, see if you could stop and take yourself through this process and see what the result of it is in your experience. And you start to awaken to a greater peace, a greater joy, and a greater freedom.